On a scale of 1 to 10, how are we feeling? There's no energy. It has to be a 10 with both hands. 1 to 10, how are we feeling? This side is feeling 0. Okay, so happy to be here with you all today. And the theme that we are working with is Ipata model. So we're also talking about resilience and reinvention, which is actually a core value that we live with in my organization, resilience. We believe that we all have potential to actually go through any type of challenge without really feeling like I'm failing. And every single time you feel like you're failing, there's more that you can also do to actually get back up. So that's the core thing that I believe in when I see the word resilience, and even what I'm so excited to share my story today, which is a ton of the resilience over the course of the time. So I'll be partially reading most of the first part of my story, and I do hope it's going to be very exciting. So, not every day will you encounter an 8-year-old Malawian girl child, more especially from Rumpi district, who actually knows how to use a computer at 8. And this is a story that I'm going to share from the past 25 years that I've lived with, fully understanding how the past 25 years still run, and I still bump into another 8-year-old girl child to date that either doesn't know how to use a computer, or they've seen one and they've never used it before. So maybe by a show of hands, how many of us got to learn how to use a computer at 8? There's one, couple of hands, not all of us. But that's the dire state of Malawi, and we'll all agree with that. We are in 2024, and you still bump into a girl child in primary school that doesn't know how to use a computer, or they've never even seen one. So, such a bright and clever student, I would always grasp position 1, or 2 or 3, especially in my primary school, until when I went to Marymount Secondary School. And in about Form 2, Form 3, I realized I feel like I'm so overwhelmed. And what is this? I think primary was even better. I would get position 1 and everything was not hard. But at this point, I felt super overwhelmed and I found school very challenging. My parents were like, but you're not working hard. And they wouldn't understand the fact that I feel like the environment I'm in, being a boarding school, is very different from the school I would come from home and still have the luxury of seeing my parents or some of my friends from home, and not really feel like I have a ton of new people I have to adapt to. I have a ton of new teachers I also have to adapt to, and everything is not very easy. And guess what? For the first time, I was on number 40. This was a class of about 70 students, and I did engage in everything that was required of me in this school, whether it's group discussions or anything, and everyone was just like, how do you get from top 3 to top 40 of the class? And regardless of all the work and effort, I felt like I failed, and I was still shocked. And guess what? On top of the overwhelming feeling that I had, now I failed. And I also kept that feeling that I'm a failure. Then in my Form 4, I did do well, but it was not the result that neither me or my parents expected. And it was definitely not top 10. It was also definitely not top 20. But it was a good result still. And I did spend a couple of months reflecting whether I need to repeat. Everybody said, yeah, I need to repeat, because if you want to go to University of Malawi, obviously you have to repeat. And then a part of me is like, no, I don't think I want to repeat. How come there are other people who have managed to thrive and they never had to do, to get certain grades at this level? So I did spend a lot of time applying to different other schools, unlike University of Malawi. I was selected to the University of Livingstonia. At that point, it was for me to study education. And I kind of felt like, why am I going to study education? I want to do business or something. And this is not exactly what I want to study in my life. So I did refuse going there as much as I was selected. And I took a very long journey, unlike just going to get a degree. I went to the Malawi Institute of Journalism. I started with a certificate of journalism that I did. But before I actually got it, I actually failed one class, which was now like, okay, why am I actually failing the whole time? And why did I have to fail actually the class that I felt like was my favorite of them all? But this time around, I actually faced that failure. And I was like, let me just go and repeat the class. And I actually got a distinction the second time. So in about 3 years later, I then went to Polytechnic then, now it's MUBAS. And I attended the Continuing Center of Education, knowing that I had failed to get an interest level to get into the business school. But I went to study public relations and personnel administration, which actually became a topic that I fell in love with. I felt very closer to engaging with people, and it's something that made me realize at that point that whatever I want to do with my career, I would want to actually work with people somehow. And I had not really fully understood in what way, but it just made sense. And in 2010, I managed to actually thrive for the first time because I started working at 18. And my first job was a call center official at TNM. It was very weird because that was the very first interview I took. And for the first time, I did not have to do it twice. I just went through. And during that year, I was actually the star performer in our department for having actually thrived in my role as a call center official. There were really strict targets. Every day you have to wake up in the morning, go and respond 300 calls. That's speaking to 300 people from across Malawi. Not very easy, but it worked out. But now, that job felt like it was not very challenging for me. And I always felt like there's more I can do beyond this because every day I get to work and respond to 300 calls. Obviously, all of you would get tired. But shockingly, there's still friends of mine right now that some of them are still doing that job. I don't know how they do it. It's just very weird. Yeah, so I did that job for about 4 years and I started getting tired. And I was like, no, I think I need to change my job. And then I applied to First Capital Bank. Then it was First Merchant Bank. Having gotten that job, it was actually a lesser position to what I was coming from. So I went to start as a bank clerk. Obviously, that's more positions, that's an entry job into the bank. And I was working as a bank teller at the Blantyre branch during that time. Lucky enough, despite the fact that I did not like that job, I still learned a lot of discipline because there's a difference between working with a company like TNM. It's very flexible. You can go to work dressed anyhow. But now you have to go to the bank. You're always suited up. You can't go with arms showing up. You can't speak in a certain tone to your customer. You can't relate with your supervisor in a certain way. And that was a whole lot of discipline that I had to adapt to. And then 2 years later, I was like, this is still not for me. So at this point, either I am stuck here or I have to figure out what I have to do. And then a customer came into the bank the other day and asked, what is it you want to do with your career beyond this? And I was like, well, I feel like I've been stuck in this job for a while. 2 years, yes, but I don't think 2 years is what I want to get to stick with for the next 3 years as well. So he was like, okay, would you like to send me your CV? I didn't even know where he works, by the way. He was just like, would you like to send me your CV through this email? And I was like, okay, great. So I sent the CV. And 2 days later, I get a call from FTH Bank, and they're like, oh, we're inviting you for an interview for a role as our operations executive. And I was like, but I didn't apply for that job. They're like, oh yeah, someone actually recommended you. was like, okay, this is nice. Probably my exit from the job that I felt like, okay, I'm stuck at this point. So that was 2015. And for the first time, I actually had a job also that I kind of felt like, yeah, it's giving me good vibes. I feel like I'm in a much higher role than the one that I was before. And then furthermore, then FDH bought Malawi Savings Bank, and then came the terrible time. So they had to do staff retrenchments. So this was a company that has about 1,000 employees, and then they had to cut them down to about 300. So you can imagine how many people lost their jobs at that time. Lucky enough, I did not. But the feeling that my next person that I sit with is no longer there because now they lost their job. The manager that I was reporting to is no longer there. Now started giving me the feeling that, so if you're employed, someone can just wake up and tell you that you're going to lose your job today. And if you didn't have a plan, that means you don't probably know what your journey looks like. So that was also the time then I started reflecting more about what it means to become an entrepreneur. And trust me, starting the entrepreneurial journey really requires this resilience because I tried several things. My first business that I started was rice. So I used to go to Garonga, get bags of rice, bring them to Mzuzu, sell in the community I live with. So I live in Luinga, right here. It's not very far. And that was going very well. But now I had a job. So it meant that I had to figure out a balance of at what point am I going to do this business and at what point am I monitoring everything without feeling like I have too much to do. So I engaged my uncle. Unfortunately, at some point, he just decides to steal the money from the business. So that failed. It ended there. And then I was like, I think I need to do something else. So I started a business with a friend, and we used to do gift wrapping. I think it's very vibrant now. People deliver gifts to offices. I always get excited when I see that because it reminds me how I had a failed business in that arena as well. And one of the reasons that business failed was simply because this friend of mine had kept my very new laptop that I had only used for 1 month. And unfortunately, her sister poured tea on it, which was like my entire life savings that went into that. So that killed a business, it killed a friendship. But yeah, we move. Yeah, so eventually I was like, what other thing can I do? So I started exploring what talents that I have personally, and I figured I'm very good at organizing things. So it could be events, it could be meetups, and I was like, let me try this out. So I established a company called Crystal Dazzle, and we were basically providing events management solutions for different corporate clients as well as also individuals. That one was really cool. It was really a thriving business. I had really amazing clients, Plan International. I had a few banks, and everything was really going so well. But then again, I still had a job. So that whole balance of I have a job, I have a business was not fully working well. And then the job now was also challenging because we were a limited team of staff members after the retrenchment. So that meant working odd hours, sometimes getting home at 12. And then I still have a business. And sometimes clients are like, no, we are interested in you. So you can send me to Ambi to come and organize the event that I want you guys to do. So I reflected, asked myself, how am I going to move with this? And then I also started questioning if it's really worth keeping my job when I was able to make 3 times more what I was earning. So one day I just woke up, went to the office, and I resigned. Everybody was shocked. My parents were like, what the hell are you thinking? You know, this is a job you really worked so hard to get, and you just decide to quit. And I'm like, you know what? I feel like there's more that I can do. And probably this business is something that I've become very good at, that is giving me a sense of satisfaction and purpose. And yeah, the HR did not acknowledge my email because they were like, no, you can't leave. Not after people were retrenched and you seem to be an asset to this company. So that letter was not responded even up to now. So I can always walk to FDH and still get my job. Yeah. But then again, establishing a business is not very easy. So in the course of me establishing Crystal Dazzle, I started understanding what it means as a young person starting up a business. You always have to master so many things. And this is not something that you learn whilst in school. This is probably not something that you're going to learn whilst you're probably working. Maybe you could gain a few things, but most of the things are very surprising at the point that you're going to actually do it yourself. I figured I'm going to actually need an office space. Going to ask every landlord, and the kind of money I make, I'm like, okay, why do I have to get an office space at 300,000 when my business will probably end up just throwing all that money for rent? So the next thing, I'm like, okay, other people are requesting for me to send them financial reports. I've never been an accountant. I don't even have an accountant on my team. So how is this going to work? And the next thing is like, oh no, you submitted an invoice, you did not include tax, so now we're going to deduct money, and then part of that money still goes to tax and you didn't know about it. So yeah, so many things. So I realized, okay, I know I left my job, I wanted to do this, but probably there's so much I should have learned that is now giving me challenges. So I had a friend of mine who also had a startup company, but also had the office space. So I would eventually share the office with him whilst I was also figuring out how to make sure the business was up and running. And whilst there, I figured so many of our friends used to pop by that run businesses and start complaining, you know, this thing happened with my client, and then now I have to wait this long, they haven't paid me. I don't even know how I'm going to survive at home. And then there's like a pool of us. So we started building a community. All of us would just be there complaining about how the business landscape looks like. And then I started getting an idea like, okay, so when all of us as young people have issues like this, where do we go to take these problems? Or maybe who gets to support us and provides us advice on how you move from this to the next level? Unfortunately, there was no one at the time. So then I started researching, and lucky enough, I was volunteering as well with an organization called Youth Empowerment Network. So we would eventually organize small trainings for students, we would do career talks in schools, and it still gave me a picture of what most young people in Malawi do not know. And they need to know. And someone has to do that role in making sure that people are aware of things. So in my research, then I figured I bumped into what we call enterprise support organizations. In short, it's called ESOs. And then I built that interest, like, okay, so in Malawi, who are the people that are running these things? Lucky enough, there was MHub in Lilongwe. We've heard of it. Yeah. Then there was Zuka Africa in Blantyre. So they do run Blantyre Hub, as well as Limbi Hub. They've also grown to other districts to date. But then you come to Mzuzu, there was nothing like that. So I was like, yeah, probably this is an opportunity I can bring, not just for me, but for the community. And who knows, it might actually become a national intervention that actually reaches out to so many people. So, as you can see, my story is not the most perfect, and probably there's a lot that I haven't mentioned, but an experience with failure, an experience with me building resilience for myself is what actually birthed what we call the Mzuzu e-hub now. And this is why we have people like Dari coming here to hype me, and they're like, oh yeah, there's Wangi, she's the CEO from Mzuzu e-hub. But it has not been something very easy. And Mzuzu e-hub basically works to provide capacity building, linkages, networks, and support for emerging entrepreneurs, but also provide equitable opportunities for young men and women, as well as children, to be able to become self-reliant either through employment, and that means also providing adequate skills and knowledge for them to navigate the job market in Malawi. And eventually, as I speak to date, we've actually supported more than 500 emerging entrepreneurs by providing them incubation support, and at least 72% of them are still operational businesses that are contributing to at least 580 jobs created over the course of the time. And we've also trained 1,377 children, young men and women in digital skills. So you do remember that 8-year-old child? Yeah. So my concept is just that I want you to connect to the fact that at the level we all are, we don't forget where we come from. And we can give back to our communities as long as we're learning from our experiences and connecting them to the present as well as the future. And having seen what has worked with Mzuzu eHub, I have also been surrounded by an amazing team. Currently, we have a team of 16 that's very dynamic and dedicated to the cause because they're very passionate about what we do. And it really gives me a sense of happiness that it's not just me that understands that there are problems in our lives that we have to resolve, but in the course of that, it's not going to be very easy. So we all have to work as a team. We have to collaborate if we want to get meaningful impact. So now, there's a quote that I want to share. Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. And this quote was written by Henry Ford, the one who created the cars that we see, the fancy Ford Rangers and all that. And now, as we come to the present, I always encourage fellow young men and women that as you're still in uni, as you're still in secondary level, whatever challenges you're encountering, make sure you're figuring out at that stage that I am a part of a community, I belong to a community, and I should never forget the community that I come from, because we're the people that are going to actually provide solutions for these communities. Sometimes we always hear things like, the government is not doing this. Yeah, they're not. But what are you doing about it? How are you demonstrating resilience, even in the current terrible economic situation that Malawi has, to make sure the challenge that we hear every day that there's no forex, and the solution is that we need to produce more or manufacture more? What's your plan? Because it's not going to be about you alone. It's going to be about you, the children you might have in future, as well as the community that you belong to. So it's a question you always have to move with as of now. Lesser complaints, more action. If you're an action person, you fully understand that everything is never easy. But if it's never easy, always make sure you're surrounded with people that continue to inspire you, that continue to encourage you in the journey that you opt to take. And this is not just about being an entrepreneur. Even in the workplace, things are never easy. Don't allow anyone even lie to you if you're not yet employed, that no, it's easy to get a job and you stick in that job. There is what we call office politics. Someone is going to wake up at one point and want to make life very difficult for you. So what are you doing to prepare your mind to make sure that you're going to fight those societal pressures, the office politics, and especially if you're a young woman like the young women that we all have here, you even experience a lot of stereotypes. You might want to become a software developer. ICT is not an easy sector to penetrate. There's still lesser women. Sometimes you still hear the fact that, oh, but how did you get to do tech as a woman? And then it's like, okay, why would you ask me that? I thought this was for everybody, you know? So those are some of the stereotypes you might still encounter. And someone might just be there and discourage you. Did you say you want to start a business? But business is hard. It's not going to work for you to work in that space. Trust me, this year, I felt like that after achieving so many things. I kind of started feeling like, but do I have to do more? And if it's that more, what more can I do? But are people not going to question why I'm doing more? Just because of the experience that I initially had when I was setting up this company. I went to Nigeria for a leadership program, and there was a very interesting lady that came to speak to us. And this woman, when they were introducing her, she has 7 degrees. She has 5 companies. And she has a consulting firm that actually consults for AU, UNDP, and all these companies. And she has a family. Then she has herself. And here I was thinking that if I do more, what's someone else going to think? And that really inspired me. And I was like, this year, I just established a new company. It's my second company. It's called Libwe. Libwe means rock or stone, and a stone symbolizes strength, which is one of the core things that relates a lot with resilience, because you must have a strong mind, you must have a strong posture, and a strong hold in everything that you do. And in this business, I started it with adequate wisdom, knowing that there's so much I've accumulated in the past 7 years running Mzuzu eHub that I feel like I would even do 10 times better in this new sphere. So don't allow anyone make you feel like you can't do more. At this stage, plan to be that lady or whoever that has those 7 degrees, and it's very okay. No matter whatever challenge you face, make sure you're not just thinking I'm going to get employed and it's enough. Have the job, have the business or businesses, and it's very okay. But the key thing, like I said, always have people surrounding you that are not bringing you down or making you feel lesser of yourselves, or even trashing whatever ideas that you're coming up with. Because in that sense, there's a lot of sense of community that will make you stronger. I don't think most of my friends that I had are still my friends as of now. And one of the reasons is just because none of them thought whatever I was doing made sense. There was even a time my mom went to, I laugh about this with her, so when you meet her, it's not something that probably we can make fun of and it's funny, but it's still funny anyway, because at some point when I had just quit my job at FDH, she brought me church elders to pray for me. And it was more like, I think my daughter, there's something wrong with her. There's no way she leaves her job and says she's just going to set up a company that none of us even know whether it's going to work or not. And there I was like, this is my mom. You're supposed to understand that what I want to do is going to thrive at some point. But it wasn't in her head at that time. But now you see her even standing next to me and she's going to brag about me like no man's business. Yeah, so eventually you also have to fight against the odds. It's the people closest to you that might also bring you problems that you might have to build this resilience for, because if they don't listen to what your dreams are, it means they're the point of failure that you have. They're the point of, probably I can't do this that you have. So sometimes forget your family. Go to people that will understand you better and engage with those ones. I've always had a pool of mentors. I always change because every stage of building your career, your professional leadership development requires you to change something. So it's not the same mentor you can start with today that you're going to have in 2030. No. You realize that in 2030, the problem maybe I'm dealing with is the fact that maybe now we make more money, so now I don't know how to manage this money. Or you're dealing with the fact that I'm struggling with work-life balance because initially I had one thing, but now I have 10 things. And then there's my child, there's who. It's not very easy. I I always feel funny when some of the people on my team are always like, "How do you manage to do all this?" And then you have a son, and then you have school that's popping up. You have this. I'm like, at this point, I also feel like I'm on autopilot. So whatever works, works. What doesn't work just doesn't work. And the cool thing I also learned is sometimes you can't achieve work-life balance in your life. You can't, because make your work part of your life. That's the rule. So make that job part of your life. Live with it. It should be your lifestyle. There's not a single day that I'm like, I'm going to be on leave. Because if I go and leave, someone from work still calls me. And they're like, oh no, there was this thing that's needed. So you can imagine if I was not resilient enough, I would literally say, you know what, don't involve me, I'm not on leave. But at this point, I'm always compassionate, and I understand that if I don't respond to this person, probably something won't go well. So this reinvention context is basically the fact that life evolves, and you must evolve with it. Every situation you get into, you must adapt to that situation. Again, even in challenging times, you adapt. I have been also reflecting so much on how every single time the devaluation happens, I still walk into ShopRite, and how are people still buying tons and tons of things? And yet we are complaining that things have gotten expensive. You know why? They adapt. Because if your budget in a month was 100,000, there's been devaluation. You already know my budget is 200,000. And if I don't adapt, these things I buy are not going to be enough. There might be experiences as well that sometimes will shock you. I remember there was a student that walked on my house the other day, and she tells me, I'm looking for a job. So I'm like, the job that I currently need is a nanny to take care of my child. And you say you're a student. How are we going to do that? This girl clung to me like crazy. That's literally how bad things might be if you see how our economy operates. I literally had to say, you know what, maybe let's figure something out, but forget this job, because you probably might have situations where you leave and I'm also not here and this child gets stuck that we have to resolve, but maybe let's talk about a different way we can support this problem you have. In a way, it just reminded me that this person was literally trying to adapt from a situation she was in to make sure she improves to a different situation and make sure that any challenge she has also improved. So before you complain, try and figure out some solutions from your own perspective. That's what we call adapting and also adjusting to how certain situations will be. So I am going to stop here. And I do hope that this has been inspiring for you and it has given you a better understanding of what building resilience is all about. Failure, like I said, is an opportunity for you to actually build something and do something much more intelligently than you did. If you did not fail, you wouldn't have learned what lessons you would have learned at that time. So make sure the lessons you accumulate are going to help you do something better. Learning never stops. That's why there's that woman with 7 degrees. Just make sure the knowledge you're using it in a manner that's helping you improve yourself as well as the community that you're working in. So I am always happy to engage further beyond today. So in case you would love to maybe hear something that I haven't shared today, because I know my story is like a whole 33 years old of life to date, I'll be very much happy to host you at our office at any point. Thank you.